All right. Hello, everybody. It's Mr. Second Amendment, and we are doing a updated live stream on the new ATF's rule for pistol braces. I'm going to try to just get right to the point, just get through some updated information. This is really going to be stuff that I didn't really expound upon in the original live stream video, which the link for that is down in the description if you want to see the original one I did just about a week ago. So I'm just going to try to power through this as usual. I'm going to try to answer questions as they come up. And then I'll be doing any questions at the end that anyone might have. But I'm just going to try to power through this. Actually, had to go to the ER the other night. Spent a couple days in the ICU, but I'm out. And now I got this free hospital cup. Actually had some blood clots in my lungs, which was not very cash money, but made it out, got treated for that, and just trying to get better. So probably not going to spend a lot of time on here tonight. Just going to try to power through it and get going. So let's just get right to it. And for those who jump in late, that's fine. We'll just roll with it. And for those who watch this later, we'll go, you'll have all this as needed. So first of all, my disclaimer, like I did the last live stream, like I've done in the past for different legal things that we've discussed here on the channel, and like I'm going to do tonight and in the future, for as long as I'll be here on YouTube, which is kind of its own separate topic. But my disclaimer is I am not a lawyer. Not only am I not a lawyer, I am not your lawyer. Everything here is not to be taken or misconstrued as competent legal advice. This is all theory, speculation, opinion for entertainment purposes. This is not something you should roll with, legally speaking. If you do have actual legal questions that apply to you and the jurisdiction, country, place that you live, consult with a competent legal lawyer who's well practiced in Second Amendment related issues. So there is my disclaimer. One thing I'll also say in my disclaimer is I am going to explain what it says and offer certain legal remedies as to certain things you can do in the eyes of this new ruling or rule change that would make you street legal and not under the purview of this. Just because I'm talking about what it says and I'm explaining what they say you can do to make things legal does not mean that I support it or agree with it, because I don't. Repeal the NFA is my personal opinion. So just let's not get that twisted of talking over what's here and what is about to be happening versus my own opinions on it. It's two different things. So just so we're all clear. So real quick, already covered most of this in the first one with bringing out different examples of different firearms and braces and things. So we're not really going to spend a lot of time here, but what is a brace? It's a stabilizing brace. I will bring this out, stabilizing brace. And with this Velcro strap setup or some other design, it's meant to allow you to shoot a pistol brace, AR, AK pistol, other kind of pistol you have, one-handed, so it's more secure, it's physically doable. So that is the intent of the product. This one happens to be SB Tactical SBA3. It goes on a standard, at least for an AR-15 here, mil spec, 6-position buffer tube, and it's meant to be adjustable because we all have different size forearms and things like that. That's what a stabilizing brace is. A little background: stabilizing braces in one form or another have been completely street legal and good to go in the ATF size, completely legal for the past 11 years. Big brand name companies like Daniel Defense, Springfield Armory, 6 Hour, these bigger manufacturers, they've for years been including AR pistols and products right out of the factory box with a stabilizing brace on it, ready to go. So, over the past 11 years of legal stabilizing braces, the ATF itself in this rule change, it's page 248. I also have the link for the actual ATF rule change in the description if you want to look it up and check it out for yourself or follow along. ATF itself estimates over the past 11 years of legal braces that there are 3 to 7 million of these out there. The industry itself, the people who have made the braces, manufactured the braces over all these years, they estimate 10 to 40 million might be out there. And there's other braces that people have designed, on their own or smaller companies. And then you got your larger brace companies. So ATF says there could be 3 to 7 million of these braces out there. Industry says there could be 10 to 40 million. Either way, it's in the millions, which we talked about last time, that deals with the Heller versus DC decision 2008, where you can't ban things that are in common use. So moving on. Basic overview of the rule change. We went into more specific detail in the last live stream on this. We're going to go into some specifics. Some places either I didn't really elaborate on, or I fell short, or people have asked questions since then. But generally gloss over. It's a new rule change by the ATF that basically it changes the definition of what they consider a rifle is. Now, the actual law, the 1934 National Firearms Act, has not changed. There has been no change in the law, no constitutional process. It is the ATF basically changing its opinion on how it feels about what the definition of a rifle is, especially in the wake of all these braces that have been a thing for a while now. Over the years, past 11 years, ATF has kind of flip-flopped on, yes, you can shoulder it while you shoot it, basically misuse the product, use it as if it was a rifle, an SBR, and that's okay. And then the ATF said, no, it's not okay to shoulder it. And then they went back and said, okay, fine, it is okay. They changed how you're going to measure overall length without the brace or the end of the extension of the buffer tube. All of this is leading to my personal theory, which the ATF, ever since braces showed up, I think I'm not talking about the technology division, the guys who receive the product for review. Maybe it's the bump stock originally, and they need to determine if it's a machine gun or not. And they reported up to big ATF, they're higher, and said, no, this is not a machine gun. Or braces came in, said, hey, does this meet the definition of a stock? No, these are not stocks. So I'm not necessarily saying those guys. What I'm saying is I think kind of the big upper echelon, based on the movement and the history of what we know about the ATF. I think the ATF has always been, again, at the top, not very happy with braces, always kind of wanted to get rid of them, try to find some way to stamp them out. And they only kept going, and they had some losses in court and had to say, okay, fine, they're still good. And I think for big ATF or at the top, braces for the past 11 years have just kind of been this nightmare that just won't go away. So I think the ATF has always kind of wanted to find some kind of way to just ban them already. In their eyes, I think they were never down with braces. So that's personal theory. But going back to the actual rule change here, essentially not just changing their opinion on how they feel about what the definition of a rifle should be, but essentially cause and effect of this is taking millions of braced firearms that were legally determined to be pistols with braces on them, and it was totally fine. And now the ATF is redefining all of those, most of them, as unregistered, unlawful SBRs or short-barreled rifles. So another kind of theory, side note, is I have had people ask me, well, why is the ATF doing this now? We talked a little bit about that in the first live stream. It is interesting. It's right. I mean, all this stuff got announced right before SHOT Show started, the biggest, convention industry convention when it comes to firearms in the outdoors. Um, it's also interesting that current presidential administration has a bit of a scandal situation happening at the moment. So, not to cast any aspersions here, but it's not unknown that there may be some certain things that are announced or done at certain times, maybe as a distraction while other things are happening. So, could be going on. Maybe it's totally unrelated and it's just coincidence. Who knows? But that's at least something that did cross my mind. Kind of strange. Okay, so um, if your braced pistol falls under the purview of this, and the ATF now is going to consider it, an unregistered, unlawful SBR, what are the things you can do to be in compliance? Now, again, this is not me saying I love it, I agree with it, or perhaps you should do it. This is me saying what the rule says are ways to legally remedy your situation now that they moved the goalposts, and now they're going to, in 120 days, once this gets published, they're going to label you as felony possession for what was once very legal. Now that they move the goalposts on you, what are the things you can do to avoid having a felony, or at least make your firearms, your braced pistols, make things compliant or legal? So, option one, we already talked about this. I'll go over it again real quick. Option one, surrender it to the ATF. So if you just want nothing to do with it, you don't even want to roll the dice, you don't even want to try to fit, you just want to get rid of it, you can surrender it to the ATF. That is an option they offer. I don't know who would do that. You paid some money for your property, you bought it legally. So why should you have to surrender it? Especially if there are other options. Next option, you can destroy it. And again, I don't know who would willingly spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on their firearms and their personal property just to turn around and destroy it. There's also a lot of people who might own these guns, but they don't have a bandsaw, they don't have a plasma torch, they don't have a definitive way to do some heavy duty destruction. So I don't know who would do that either. Next thing is you can install a longer barrel so that your short pistol barrel is now good to go. I'll bring up another example. So this right here, I showed this one last time. This does have a stabilizing brace on it. This is the SBA4 stabilizing brace. And this is a 10.5 inch barrel. This was kind of a Mark 18 clone that I was kind of putting together. I've messed with over the years. So if you have something like this, well, instead of a 10.5 inch barrel, you could change the barrel. You could put a 16 inch or longer barrel, and then it would be a rifle. You could take the brace off, put a stock on it, and now you have a rifle. So that is one thing you can do. I did have a question about what if I already have a suppressor, tax stamp, it's already mine. What if I permanently attached the suppressor to the barrel? Would that be okay? So it would. ATF, if you take a muzzle device and you pin and weld the muzzle device onto the barrel, and now the overall length, because ATF considers that a permanent addition to the barrel, and now they include that as part of the barrel length because it's pinned and welded on. As long as you make 16 inches or more, then it would be a rifle. So if you have a 10.5 barrel like we just saw, and you have some kind of suppressor already that has a tax stamp, it's already yours. And if you were to permanently pin and weld the suppressor to the barrel, and all of that combined, you have 16 inches or more, then it would now be a rifle. You could put a stock on it and you're out of the problem zone. Of course, big downside is you're pinning and welding a suppressor onto your gun. And, suppressors do need maintenance every now and then. With enough rounds being shot, you might have to get the suppressor sent back to the manufacturer for warranty repair, or to get the whole thing re-cored with new baffles, however it works. The manufacturer will probably void your warranty if you pinned and welded it to your barrel. And you would have to undo that just to send it back. So you do enter into some other problems. And I guess that just depends how much you would actually shoot it or how much you shoot that firearm. But whether it's a muzzle device or a suppressor, if you've measured it, installed, and you can see that you're going to make 16 inches or more, yes, you could pin and weld that muzzle device or suppressor or a very long flash height or whatever length you need to get the 16 inches or more. If it's pinned and welded, you're going to be good to go. Now it's a rifle and it's not a problem anymore, according to the rule change. Let's see. One thing I do want to say is we can do that for a pistol. So with this particular build, I got this as a stripped lower and just over time built it up and into the pistol that you see today. So this started life as a stripped lower receiver. And when you purchase this as a stripped lower receiver, and we're just talking ARs, it gets a little more sticky with AKs and things like that, where it's not as easy to just build them at home. But specifically, we're talking, you buy it as a stripped lower receiver. This is not a rifle. This is not a pistol. This is just a frame, a receiver. And then you build this into a pistol. You can then legally turn it into a rifle, either installing a longer barrel on something like this or pinning and welding to get you the 16 inches of barrel length. Now, the problem can show up, and this is just more of a side note, is if you buy a complete already built AR-15 and you bought it and it came to you from the manufacturer as a rifle, you can't go down to pistol anymore. You can take a pistol, make the barrel longer, turn it into a rifle, or you can take a stripped lower, make it into a pistol, then later turn it into a rifle. But if you bought an AR and it already had 16-inch or more barrel, you built it out as a rifle, you cannot go back to a pistol. You can't change it. It's now the only way is to register as an SBR. So that's more of a side note. I mean, honestly, one good thing about buying strip lowers is this is how it was made and sold and sent to you from the manufacturer. This is how it was released to you in the gun shop you bought it at as a frame or receiver. And once you take it home, there's really no one way or other to prove that you built it into a pistol first versus a rifle first. So that's just one kind of side note. So we can make the barrel longer, either change the barrel, pin and weld, muzzle device, suppressor, whatever. As long as we got 16 or more, it's a rifle. Change out the stock, we're good. Take the brace off, put a stock on, good. Next thing you could do is just go ahead and take the brace off. Now, this being an SBA4 and the SBA3 is the same way. There's other braces that are similar. You know, this is a standard 6-position mil-spec buffer tube in the case of the AR. So within seconds, I could put the brace right back on, or, you know, mechanically speaking, a rifle stock would fit on this. So the issue is, you know, the safest route you could take, because like I said in the first stream, the braces themselves aren't going to be illegal, and the pistol by itself is not going to be illegal. But it's when you combine the two that's going to be illegal. And it does mention that once you take the brace off, if you want to remedy it that way, then you need to have some way of making sure it can't go back on. So that would be kind of your old school broom handle AR pistol buffer tubes, that it doesn't have this track for a brace or stock. It's just simply does the function it needs to cycle the gun. Or we would call them the paint roller buffer tubes, just a broom handle with a piece of foam around it. But in those cases, you're not able to put a brace or stock. It is just a round tube that has no way of putting anything on it. That would be the safest approach. It wouldn't be enough, in my opinion, to just take the brace off and call it good, because you could feasibly put a stock or brace just right back on in seconds. So you would want to change this out to one of the broom handle style, AR pistol brace buffer tubes where nothing can go on. So that would at least be the legally safest way to remedy it if you want to do it that way. I guess a feasible potential solution could be that you just go ahead and separate the upper receiver from the lower receiver, and they're not actually snapped together. So an example of that would be, hey, I don't want to take the brace off. I don't want to add a longer barrel. I don't want to change the buffer tube to the old school broom handle. So right now I have an AR pistol, which is currently legal with a brace. This is what's in the crosshairs of this new rule change. So what if I just, go ahead, at least on an AR pattern, you can do this. What if I just separate the upper from the lower? And now I have a lower that has a brace on it, but there's no receiver, there's no barrel on top. And now I have an upper receiver that has a 10.5 inch barrel, but there's no actual firearm or lower receiver on it. And what if I just hang out with both of these? I guess under one interpretation, you could say you should be fine. Under a more aggressive interpretation, which you always want to assume in the ATF's case, that's what they're going to go with. They could try to get you for what's called constructive possession or constructive intent, where it's like, hey, the two things are not put together currently, but you possess them, you have them, and in a matter of seconds, when it's convenient to you, you can slap it together. And no, it's not illegal as is right now, but we're still going to charge you with an unlawful SBR because you have all the pieces, you have all the ingredients to bake this cake. So we're just going to charge you with that. That could be a possible issue if you wanted to go that route, just thinking you can, take the upper off the lower and call it good. Well, maybe not necessarily. Another feasible way to go is you could, submit photographs to the ATF or submit it or show up to a, field office, schedule an appointment, and see if they'll physically look at it and make a determination. Whether, you could say, hey, I have what I believe to be a pistol, but I'm submitting this to you, these photos, or making an appointment so you can physically see it, if they even would do that. I think it's a pistol, but I want to know officially what you determine it to be. I guess you could do that. I wouldn't encourage anyone to do that because, first of all, the ATF is clearly not in the business of wanting to hook anyone up or help you out, I should say. They're not in the business of wanting to make determinations that things are pistols. They're in the business of determining things are SBRs, as they feel like it. So if you submit it, hey, I think I have a pistol. What do you guys think? I'm requesting an official determination. Problem is, they're not trying to do you any favors. Next problem is if they determine, yeah, based on our determination, that's an unlawful SBR, it is not a pistol. Well, now they know that you have it. They know your address and your name, and they know what you have. They've just determined it's an unlawful SBR. So now something's going to happen where they're going to show up to try to retrieve it, or they're going to ask for you to surrender it, and it just opens you up. We don't really want to go down that road. And if you actually do luck out and they say, yeah, we agree, we determine that this is a pistol. The problem with that is I would not change anything. I wouldn't change optics. I wouldn't move even the angled foregrip. Even the pistol grip, like however it was when they saw it, however you photographed it, every single part and accessory where it was, leave it alone, because even if you change one little tiny thing, they only made a determination on what they saw. So even a tiny little change, it's a whole new gun. It needs a whole new determination. And the mystery zone is you're back to square one. So I wouldn't recommend that. Or the most controversial way to remedy your legal situation that you now find yourself in is to do an amnesty registration with the ATF. That you can register it as an SBR with the ATF, and they're going to waive the $200 tax stamp fee that would normally happen when you try to register, or transfer fee, the tax stamp fee for an SBR. They're going to waive it, and you can take advantage of this amnesty period. I got a couple issues with that, or at least those who are thinking of doing that. Some things I think that you should think about. So, first of all, I've had a lot of people asking me, do you think that's a trap or is it not a trap? Personally, I think it's a trap. First of all, any opportunity to expand the registry and get as many people into the registry as possible, I think they're always going to try to do that. I also think it's a trap because, first of all, for those who don't know, the normal process for wanting to manufacture or create an SBR, you would file a Form 1 with the ATF. And the Form 1 is, hey, I don't currently possess it. It's not even a thing yet, but I do have maybe the lower receiver. I mean, you got to have make, model, serial number. I have some of the parts. This is the SBR I intend to make. Here's the serial number, all my information, fingerprints, all that. Here's the intended barrel length and what the overall length is going to be. This is what I want to do. And within 30 to 60 days with the e-file Form 1, ATF will come back, and if they approve it, then they email you your tax stamp. They say, okay, you've paid the money, you've submitted all the info we wanted, you're now in the registry, here's your tax stamp. You can now go ahead to create this thing. And then, and only then, is when you purchase the barrel, purchase the stock, get all the stuff together, and then build it. That's how you normally do a Form 1, that you wish to create an SBR and enter it into the registry. The problem with this, or the whole amnesty situation, is you're not basically saying, hey, I would like to do this, and here's what it's going to be. What you would be doing is saying, hey, I already have it. It's already built. You guys already, in the next 120 days are going to consider this a felony. But I already have it. And in order to do the registry or the amnesty registration without the $200 tax stamp, they're going to want, photographs and proof that you have it and you've owned it and you're trying to register it so they can see it. So basically, I don't want to say you're potentially incriminating yourself, but that could be what might happen depending on your circumstance. So, one situation, the normal way that we're all used to is, hey, I'd like to build it. Here's what I'm going to do upon approval. Instead, this amnesty situation is, hey, give us photos of you breaking the law in our eyes, and we'll decide whether we want to approve this or not. Now, I mean, if you have a clean background, you ordinarily pass background checks, your paperwork's in order, all that good stuff. The chances you'll get approved are good. It'll take a little bit, but if for whatever reason you get denied or they kick it back because of some administrative or, hey, you didn't check this box or whatever, or something happens for a number of reasons that they don't approve your amnesty tax stamp, well, that's the problem. You already have it. They know that you have it. They have your name, your fingerprints, your address. And now it's kind of like, well, you're not applying to make it. You already have it. We denied you. We're going to want it, or we're going to pay you a visit. We're going to figure this out. That's the big problem I have with the amnesty registration. So just consider that. I've seen some talk about this 90 days or 88 days background check situation. Long story short, normally when you just purchase a firearm and you do a background check at the gun shop or your FFL to pick it up, the NICS system is going to come back with one of three responses. Either you're approved and good to go, flat out denied, or delayed. And delayed is maybe someone else with your same name is out there committing felonies, and they need a couple hours or a couple days to verify that it's you, not this other guy. Maybe there's any number of reasons why you could be delayed. And it happens, it can happen. And basically, by federal law, if someone is in a delayed status for 90 days, then it just automatically gets denied. And the ATF actually has to expunge the records of all of that information on the 4473, because it's been hanging out for 90 days with no resolution. It gets denied. The person didn't get the gun. You have to delete the records. So on day 88, just 2 days before, that's when the ATF starts just denying and deleting this information, just to be 2 days ahead of it, which is surprisingly, that's trying to be ahead of the curve in terms of timing and efficiency is pretty rare for the ATF. But that's what they do. But here's the thing, that's on a background check, which they will conduct when you apply for a tax stamp, whether you do it the normal way or whether you try to take advantage of this amnesty. So while your paperwork is waiting to even get seen, to even get processed, and your background check initiated, while you're waiting, nothing has even happened yet. It's when they initiate the background check, which usually comes back instant unless it's denied or delayed. So that I wouldn't worry about as much. Everyone's like, oh man, the system's going to get jammed up with a bunch of people trying to register for amnesty and just not have to pay the 200. And I think that's true. The system is going to get jammed up. It's going to crash. There's going to be issues. The wait time on getting your stuff approved or processed is going to get extenuated even worse than it already is. But I wouldn't worry about this 88-day, 90-day situation as much, because that whole time that you're waiting, you could possibly be waiting months. I mean, there's dudes that have waited over a year to get a can or a suppressor or a Form 4 SBR. So, all of that time that you're waiting, it's not like they initiate the background check and then it's just going to expire after 90 days and then you're denied and now you're screwed. They haven't even started it because they haven't even looked at your paperwork yet. So for those reasons, I see some talk about the 88-day, 90-day background check, and oh man, is that going to be an automatic denial? I wouldn't worry about that as much because they don't even look at your paperwork or initiate that background check until they get to it. Let's see. What else do I have in my notes here? One last thing I want to point out about this before I get to the question here from Patriot. What's going on? Is on the e-file amnesty. Like I said, I think they're now going to take forever. Where normally you could e-file a Form 1 to make an SBR. I've seen some come back as early as 24 days, a month and a half. I think with all this craziness that's going to happen, there's going to be so many people, just so many do-gooders, as I said last time, just trying to get amnesty, or people trying to take advantage of not having to pay $200 and, hey, I'm going to register like 10 SBRs in one go. It's going to jam up the system. So I would expect that backlog to increase. Part of the rule change too is, hey, you have 120 days to take advantage of the amnesty if you want. And we understand it might get a little overloaded. And if you're still waiting on your tax stamp and it's been past the 120 days and now you're in possession of what we consider a felony, but at least you applied within that 120-day window and you're just waiting, then you're going to be okay. And it's like, well, how much do you want to trust that? Is there still not a possibility for issues to happen between when you apply for it within the 120 days versus when you finally get the tax stamp back? So you have a felony possession item that the ATF considers a felony, but you don't have a tax stamp for it yet, and it's not your fault. You're just waiting. Is there potential there could be legal issues that happen in that meantime? Potentially. So, I mean, I guess it's just how much do you trust the ETF to Scout's honor? Just say, oh, yeah, I mean, as long as you applied within 120 days, and if you're just waiting on your tax stamp and you're lawfully in possession of what we consider a felony, oh, it's okay, you're cool. Yeah, I don't know if I trust that. I guess I'll leave that up to each of you. All right, getting to the questions here. From Patriot, I'm not going to lie. All of this is what scares me. It seems as if the ATF is out to get you. It definitely does. I guess the way I would probably rephrase that is, I don't know if they're out to get you as much as they're trying to corner us into a place where either we fit into this very limited list of not very great options, or we just become felons. So maybe in a way, yeah, you could definitely say they're out to get you. I think it's just out to corner you with terrible options, and if you don't do one of these terrible options that we want you to do, then if you get caught, it's just a felony, and we don't care. Seems to be the mindset. Remind me again why the ATF suddenly decided to change their minds. I went over that earlier, but I actually brought up in this that I didn't mention last time that it's kind of interesting in terms of the timing that they rolled this out and announced it right as SHOT Show was about to start. And also it's kind of interesting that current presidential administration is in the middle of a scandal right now with classified documents. So what better than to just roll out this huge monstrosity and get everyone angry about it and get the attention, get the eyes looking elsewhere. Now, maybe it is coincidence. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist guy, but there are definitely times when our government and certain media, they will purposely release certain things or do certain things with strategic timing, with the intent that, oh, let's just take out the garbage and do this on a late Sunday night so everyone doesn't even see it. Or there definitely are some strategic things that have happened and do happen. I'm not necessarily saying yes for sure that's what's going on, but it's something it crossed my mind. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it's coincidence. I don't know. Let's see, what was the rifle you were showing earlier? Was that an SBR? No, that was a braced pistol. That was my Mark 18 build. Yeah, that's this guy right here. I took it, separated it into two halves, just to demonstrate for one of my earlier points. But no, this is a pistol, not an SBR. Currently still legal as of the filming right now. And once this rule gets it's in the Federal Register, but once it gets published, that's when the 120 days start. So that being a pistol is still good to go, at least for the next 120 plus a couple days. So moving on, like I said in the beginning, I want to try to get through this just to give you guys the information. Let's see, I already talked about that. So one of the big kind of spooky things that has kind of been uncovered in recent days about this change, it is 293 pages. Again, the actual document from the ATF is in the description if you want to open it up and look at it. It's 293 pages. And once they announced it, there's bunch of people, amateurs and regular people like me, professional Second Amendment lawyers. There's been a lot of people that, it takes a little time to read through all of that stuff and see what it actually says and offer some kind of opinion on what it means. But in recent days, FRAC, and that is the Firearms Regulatory Accountability Coalition, actually notice it starts on page 246 and then it goes to page 247 if you've got the document pulled up. But they notice something that is pretty onerous here. It deals with 922, so 18 U.S. Code 922. That needs a video on its own. Long story short, deals with firearms licensing, manufacturing of ammunition and firearms, importation. It's actually called unlawful acts, is 18 USC 922. As a side note, if you actually look through 922, you'll see there still is language and determinations in the law based on sporting purposes and whether it has sporting purposes or not. So it goes to show that some of these older laws, that we still got bad laws on the books, and these laws were not passed in good faith, or especially after the Bruin decision of last year. The Second Amendment wasn't here for sporting. It is here for a purpose, not sporting and not hunting, which we've talked about many times in different videos in the past. But it's interesting we still have bad laws like this on the books that are still passed in the 80s and the 90s and things like that, that still are talking about sporting purpose when the whole Second Amendment has nothing to do with that at all. Anyway, side note aside, let's see, what else did I miss? So 922 section R, 922R as we call it, AK guys, import guys, AK builders, you guys are familiar with what 922R is, but essentially it covers rifles and shotguns that are imported. And if they're going to be imported, then there is only a certain amount of parts allowed to be of foreign origin. And the rest of the parts, or a certain number of components of the parts, must be U.S. manufactured. So 922R, it's been around since the early 90s. That was a George H.W. Bush administration thing, from what I remember. And again, that needs a video on its own. But basically, a foreign imported gun, there's a certain amount of U.S. made parts that need to be on it to be 922R compliant. That's why you see on a lot of imported AKs, you'll have the old, Tapco trigger kits and different U.S. made parts to be compliant with 922R. Now, I mean, importers, manufacturers, dealers, professional AK builders using parts kits and then selling as an FFL their AKs they build. 922R is a big deal, and they all adhere to it and have to pay close attention to it and know about it. But I haven't seen, to my knowledge, I don't know of, and I haven't seen anyone actually go down for 922R, at least the private citizen. Maybe they're building an AK in their own garage. They've got all the tools. I haven't actually seen anyone prosecuted for that, but certainly, yes, the dealers, the importers, manufacturers, they all care because they have to care about it. Why does 922R matter when we're talking about this new pistol brace rule change from the ATF? Well, here's how it matters. And again, FRAC discovered this a couple days ago, Firearms Regulatory Accountability Coalition. So again, page 246 to 247, and I'm actually going to read this verbatim real quick. Let's see if I can maximize that. Okay, here we go. So it's not very long, but I think it's important enough. I'm going to read this verbatim. Again, starts on the bottom of 246, and then it moves down to page 247. Section 9, now I'm quoting, Section 922R generally makes it unlawful for any person to assemble from imported parts any semi-automatic rifle. And 27 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, 478.39, provides that a person may not assemble a semi-automatic rifle using more than 10 of the imported parts listed in the relevant paragraphs of the regulation. So in that CFR 478.39, it lists, hey, these are the 10 parts that basically these are the only things you can have that are imported. The other stuff needs to be U.S. made. And this is for semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. Continuing on, the criminal violation under 18 USC 922R is for the assembly of the semi-automatic rifle. Therefore, a modification of this kind of firearm through the removal of the relevant parts would not cure the 922R violation because the assembly has already occurred. End quote. Okay, so what does that mean? And it goes on a little bit more. I'll let you guys look at the actual document if you want to read or continue to read that. What does that mean? So 922R matters on the assembly of it and making sure that you have no more than these 10 listed parts, and the rest have to be US made. And that is the assembly of the gun. Here's the issue. If you have, for example, an H&K SP5 made in Germany, MP5 pistol, and maybe it had a brace on it when you got it, that was already assembled. So that ship has sailed in terms of, hey, can I just take my Draco pistol that was imported or my imported MP5 clone or build or whatever? If you have it like a Zastava AK pistol that came with a brace on it, imported. Now, again, 922R, we're talking about semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. It does not talk about pistols. So importers, manufacturers were bringing them in as pistols with a brace because braces have been cool for the past 11 years. Now we're in this situation where, as they said here, again, page 246, 247, that the assembly already happened. And now that we're changing, we don't believe it's a pistol anymore. We're saying it's a rifle. It's an unlawful SBR, even with the brace now. The assembly has already happened. So you can't just go back and, okay, well, fine, I'll take out the parts needed, put in US parts, and I'm good, right? No. It goes on to say basically the only options you have for those specific types of imported pistols with braces, and now they're considering them SBRs, rifles. The only legal remedy for that is either to surrender them or destroy them, is what it says, essentially, at least on just an honest kind of interpretation of where they're going with this, or what it would mean if it was tested in court. Someone got arrested for this once it takes effect, 120 days from now or plus. So that's kind of the big, huge new development about the pistol brace rule that, again, was recently discovered by FRAC, where you're in the situation where it was a pistol, didn't have to worry about 922R. They were brought in for years, all these braces, good to go. But now that their ATF's considering them rifles, and the gun was already assembled and it was not assembled with a certain number of parts that it needs to be 922R compliant, now you're in a situation where there is no legal remedy for that gun. It seems like they're kind of taking the approach of once a machine gun, always a machine gun. So, you can't have a machine gun receiver and you just take out the full auto parts, put in the semi-auto parts, and everything's cool. No, it's not. In the ATF size, once a machine gun, it is always a machine gun. And the only way to make it not a machine gun is to cut it in 3 individual pieces. So torch the receiver in 2 different cuts. Seems like that mindset is kind of the same thing. Hey, it was already assembled with foreign parts. It's not 922R compliant, and it's just once it was what it was, there's no going back. Even if you want to change out US parts, whatever. So that's kind of the big problem here. Now, I mean, beyond all of this being stupid and frustrating and onerous, and in my view, unconstitutional, all of this, beyond all that, kind of the silly thing about this is like you can have, you have like an imported Zastava, AK pistol that came with a brace. And now this is going to be considered an unlawful SBR. And now because of 922R, there is no remedy besides destruction or surrendering it. But then you can get like a Palmetto State AK that has a pistol brace on it. And that's how you bought it. That's how it came. And functionally, mechanically, they're the same gun doing the same thing. Still the same caliber, takes the same mags, parts are interchangeable. They're the same gun, functionally, mechanically speaking. But one of them, because it was imported, it's impossible. There's no way to make it legal. And then the other one is you can do the amnesty or some other way to try to make it legal, like we talked about. And that's where the whole silliness of this, beyond the frustration, shows up, where it's like you got 2 guns that are functionally, mechanically the same, and they do the same thing. But one has these markings on it, and the parts were made overseas. This one has these markings on it. The parts were all made here. And one is just a felony. You got to surrender it, destroy it. And the other one, you can remedy it, find a remedy that you want to pick. Just doesn't seem to make sense. It never really does. So I guess if you're in that boat where you have an imported pistol that you got in the brace, now the ATF says it's a rifle, but 922R is going to jam you up, and there's no way going back. You've really got three options, I guess. You can destroy it, like I said. You can surrender it, like we talked about. Neither of those are anything any of us want to do. Or option three is be a felon, I guess. Just kind of hang out with it, just keep it private. The only concern with that is, something you legally bought, with your own money, and you background check, invoice, receipt, paperwork. This is your property and you legally bought it. Now it's a felony. That's a problem, of course, like the rest of this. But another problem is there's an estimated 300 to maybe 700,000 guns like this that fall into this category. And the problem is that's a low enough number to where it might be worth the ATF's time, or they may think it's worth their time because the numbers are low enough. It's not in the millions like braces, but 300 to 700,000 of these types of guns, that's a small enough number where the ATF may decide, hey, this actually is worth our time to talk to the importers and manufacturers, see through distribution, then what gun shops they went to, and then, hey, gun shop, all of these that you took in, where did they all go? And then they have to present the 4473s to show, okay, well, this one went to this guy on this day, this one went to that guy on this day, and potentially you're in a situation where ATF could show up at your door and be like, hey, we tracked all this down and we found out that you bought this Zastava AK pistol with the brace. We noticed that you didn't surrender it, and we're interested if you destroyed it because we know that you bought it. That's a big concern. Now, 300 to 700,000, that is a lot, but compared to millions of braces, that's not as much. And it kind of gets to the point where it's like, is it something they could potentially try to do someday? Is like, you know what, that's a small enough number, it's worth our while. Let's go ahead and track all these down and see what happens. At least the ones that were not surrendered to us, we want to track them down and figure out what happened. So that's a huge problem. And we saw what happened with the rare breed triggers, still ongoing. They were squeezing the manufacturer, they were squeezing, the FFLs and distributors and sellers who sold them. And then they were tracking down individual buyers, at least what they could get. And that was a non-serialized, that was not a firearm. So again, there's kind of a known history of what could happen, but we don't know. So, I guess if they came to your door and said, hey, we want proof that you destroyed it, maybe you didn't take pictures of it when you did. You just torched it, cut it, threw it out, and just that was the end of it. You didn't take any pictures. Are they going to buy that? Are they going to be satisfied with that? Or if you say, hey, I sold it, man, once all this, ATF pistol brace rule change thing happened, I just didn't want anything to do with it, so I sold it. And then they could turn around and be like, oh, well, you knowingly sold what we considered a felony. So you sold a felony item. It just opens you up so much. And of course, the big issue is the pretty much all of these imported pistols that have been coming in over the years, whether they're AKs or MP5, HKG3 kind of things. None of these imported pistols are cheap. Whether it's the B&Ts or whether it's H&Ks or the Zastavas or AK derivatives, none of these guns are cheap. So we're talking about people who have thousands of dollars. I had one particular regular who he was a big import collector. This dude probably has at least 15 guns himself alone that would fall under that. How many thousands of dollars Is he going to be out of that? And there is going to be no compensation. And going back to the things you would technically have to do to remedy your situation, register it as an SBR, put a longer barrel on it, things like that. The ATF's they moved the goalposts on us. Everything was legal until they just decided it wasn't. And now we have to do these uncomfortable, undesirable options, or else if we decide to do one of those options, we want to buy a longer barrel. We want to get the barrel pinned and welded to make it 16 or greater. We want to register as an SBR, and then we got to engrave it. The ATF is not going to give anyone any money for the gunsmithing fees or the cost to purchase a new barrel, the cost to get it engraved. No one is getting reimbursed for any of that. And if you're going to surrender a gun, destroy a gun, or try to do this in compliance with it, they're not going to compensate you for how much money that you spent on that really expensive Zastava AK pistol that you had to destroy or surrender. No one's compensating you for your property. So that's another big issue that I have on top of all the other issues I have with all this. So I guess we're getting close to the end here. Like I said in the beginning, just got out of the ER and the ICU, doing better now. Trying to just make this short and sweet, just get it done so I can go back to resting. But I'm good. But getting to the end here, some, I guess, I don't want to say good news, but at least some optimistic, hopeful things. And before that, let me just get to the rest of Patriots comments here. Let's see, I'll just put my glasses on. Patriot says, wonder how long it will be before they redefine all kinds of things as machine guns or whatever. I really hope that the courts step in. I'm pretty worried. Yeah, so that's really good to be reading that now as we're about to roll into the good things or the optimistic things or the hopeful things. Patriot says, I bet probably no one is going to surrender it. I would love that to be the case. I think there's always one. There's whatever company or business you work for or business you own, or if you've been in the military, or there's always one. There's always one guy in every platoon. There's always one that everyone gets the deal and everyone is doing the hustle. And there's always that one. There's always one guy. There's always that guy who is goody two shoes and just is so terrified and they just want to do the right thing because they don't personally want to get in trouble. They're not picking up the drift and they're not, with the hustle. There's always that guy. There's always one. So I think there are going to be people who, maybe during COVID and all the riots and everything, and everyone was panic buying guns. And they just saw this Daniel Defense AR pistol right out of the box. And they said, you know what? This is awesome. This is great. This is going to be small, portable, really good for home defense. I think let's do it. And they buy it. And then and this is an issue I brought up last time, if they even know about it, that this is happening, this rule change. But if they know about it, they may look at that and be like, whoa, potential felonies, like, man, I want nothing to do with this. I can't really sell it to anybody because it's going to be illegal. I want nothing to do with it. And I'm not a gunsmith, so I don't know how to change a buffer tube or a barrel. And you know what? I just want nothing to do with it. Those people are out there and they exist. Thankfully, though, it's not a lot of people. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, especially from the last 2 years of purchasing, that they're not even going to know about this rule change. They're not even going to know that this was a thing. They're not even going to know that the gun they legally bought at a gun shop with a background check, paperwork, invoice, receipt, they're not even going to know that that gun is now a felony. And the 120 days is going to come and go if it doesn't legally get challenged. And these people, there's a lot of people, they're not even going to know. So that's the worst part as well. And we talked about that the first time. So the hopeful stuff, So here's the thing about a rule change like this. It's at the Federal Register, and once it gets published, which should be happening soon, and then once it goes live and the 120 days start, once it gets published in the Federal Register, it can't be changed. There is no amendments. It's take it or leave it. It is what it is now. And I'm hoping between the various groups, Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, all these other groups, once it gets published, that they go after it. I'm hoping it goes to at least a federal court, circuit court, and they take one look at this and they see, especially on this 922R imported pistol conundrum, like, hey, you're not giving them a way to remedy the situation. They have to surrender or destroy their property or just be a felon. You're not giving them a legal way to deal with this. And maybe, they're willing, maybe a federal court, depending which circuit, would be willing to let most of it slide. But something like this, so onerous, so scorched earth with no remedy offered, if they're going to change the rules and they don't even have a remedy to fix it, besides forfeiting their property, destroying it, or just being a felon, I'm hoping that at least, and again, it's an all or nothing. Once it's published, either you take it or leave it. Either the whole thing stands or the whole thing has to go. You can't pick and choose of what's going to stay. So I'm hoping a circuit court, federal court, will see this, review it when the inevitable lawsuits start flying, and hopefully they'll just say, you know what, section this, that, and the other thing, we would have let the rest of this slide, but these several sections we have problems with. So because it can't be changed, and we're the judicial branch, we don't make the law, we can't change any of this, but we have issues with these several items. The whole thing is just done, thrown out. You got to start over. So that's what I'm hoping for. At the very least, I'm hoping, between these different gun groups, and through activism and just writing letters and phone calls to your representatives about this, I'm hoping that at least a stay or a restraining order or injunction, something, at least pauses it, or outright it is so unacceptable to a federal court that they just throw the whole thing out and make the ATF start over. So hopefully that's what we're going to see. That's what I really hope happens. Now I'm just going to finish off the live stream here with, what do we do now? So basically this stays the same. My opinion stays the same as it was last live stream. I wouldn't do anything crazy or anything rash right now. It hasn't been published yet. It should be published in the next several days. That's when the 120 days start. And then there's, 120 days, 4 months to see what's going to happen with all of this. So right now, I think it's a little too early. As an example, people were freaking out about the ATF form 4999, which we talked about last time. And that was the worksheet of, hey, take your build and go through this worksheet. And if it picks up too many points, it's an SBR. And basically everything would be an SBR. And it was really hard to decipher. It was ambiguous. It was hard to interpret and understand it. Everyone was freaking out about it. And at the time I was like, it is worth looking at and understanding, or trying to understand what's here, but I wouldn't really freak out too much. I wouldn't sweat it right now, because this is a proposed thing. We don't even know if it's going to make it, and it ended up not making it into this rule change. The worksheet itself, some themes and ideas of it made it, but that's kind of I guess a cautionary tale, or an example of let's not freak out and do anything crazy and get all wrapped around the axle right now, because once it gets published and all the lawsuits that are about to fly, and 120 days from now, 4 months, that's a lot of time for a lot of things to happen. Or maybe this whole thing just gets shut down from Jump Street and it's gone, at least for now. So wouldn't do anything crazy right now. Probably wait 1 or 2 months, see if it is still alive, and see where things are going. And probably after 1 or 2 months, and I do plan on doing update videos as time goes on and things change, because things are definitely going to be happening with this. So probably give it 1 or 2 months and, stay on top of it. See, we're all going to be, aware of it and seeing how it's going and what's happening. And then is kind of when we might need to start looking at decision making. I just have to restate my skepticism over the free tax stamps, the amnesty registry. I think it just opens you up to too many bad potential problems, opens you up to potential incriminating yourself. I do believe it's a trap of sorts for sure. If you have an SBR that you want to register, it's like, oh man, I can jump on this amnesty thing and I don't have to pay $200. I would, I would do it the traditional way, like we talked about earlier here, where you e-file a Form 1 saying what you intend to do, but it doesn't exist yet. Once it's approved, then go for the build and you're good to go, and you're not currently in possession of what they consider a felony. So under no circumstances, at least how it's looking right now, do I recommend anybody do the amnesty. If you want to do an SBR, then pay the $200 and do that. But I wouldn't try to get a free ride with the federal government. There's no such thing as free lunch. It's just not going to happen, and I think it's a trap. Lastly, I'll say I know I have people who are in my subscriber base, people who are going to see this later, just the do not comply crowd. And, hey, what I'll say to that is we're all, I'm sure most of us, most people watching or who will see this, we're all grown adults, gun owners, we're law-abiding citizens. Whatever you do in your own home or with your own property, your own legally purchased property, in the comfort of your own home, it's whatever you do is what you do. And if your path, you decide you do not want to comply and you're just going to do you and not care, hey, that's your right as an American. Whatever you're going to do is what you're going to do. I would urge, though, and I would caution two things. One is I wouldn't post it on social media. I wouldn't even, like, in the comments for this video, once it is done being live, like I wouldn't want you coming back later like, oh, I'm not going to comply, or post pictures on social media of, you took your brace off, threw a stock on it and just said, screw it. If you are in the do not comply situation, the name of the game is I would just keep a low signature, operational security, low profile, and just not advertise or document or publish stuff that could potentially be used to incriminate you later, is what I'll say to the do not comply people. And the only other thing to consider is, if one of your go-to home defense guns is a pistol that has a brace, and maybe you just said, do not comply, I'm not going to do it, and you took the brace off, you put a stock on it, and, or you have something in an unlawful configuration, according to all of this. If, God forbid, someone did come in your house, you got to lawfully defend yourself and your family. Well, that gun's going into evidence. So I guess it just depends. I mean, you're never going to see that gun again anyway. That gun is a combat loss. It is gone. But they have it. And if it's in a felony configuration and that's what you used to legally defend yourself, two things to consider, for the do not comply people. I wouldn't broadcast it or boast about it or any of that. And just keep in mind, if one of your go-to home defense guns is a do not comply situation, if you did have to, God forbid, use it, just keep that in mind. It's going into evidence. They have it, and God knows what could happen from that point. Just going to catch up on some of these. I'm going to open the floor now for any questions you guys have. I can see one here from God's Hero Live. I'll put my glasses on. But if anyone else, I don't even know how many people are watching right now. I got 7. which is not too bad for a Monday night for this channel. But I'm opening the floor if any of you guys have questions. I'll stay for a little bit, and then I'm going to sign off. But here we go. All right, God's Hero Live. What does American gun chic think about? Would you mind refining that, or I'm just a little confused? Yeah, if you want to refine that. But overall, guys, like I said, in the last live stream and this live stream, the whole purpose was just to explain this rule to the best of my knowledge, offer my opinions, and basically just what I think it says and what this means. And it doesn't mean I agree with it. It doesn't mean I want it to happen. I'm on team repeal the NFA. But this is just, and again, talking about things you can do to legally remedy your situation. I don't agree with that either, but just me explaining it is to inform, entertainment purposes, opinion. But it does not mean I agree with it or want it, because I don't. Just teasing. Okay. I was like, what? What is he talking about? I live in Jersey. Never had the opportunity to buy anything cool anyway. I got a buddy in North Bergen, and it's been a minute since I've been to Jersey. Yeah, I know the laws there are pretty not great when it comes to a lot of things, but especially firearms. And, as a former person who lived in California for many years, was in the gun industry out there. Okay, Bergen County, there you go. But as someone who used to live in California, used to be in the gun industry in California, and I mean, I escaped in 2014, never to return, never been back there since. It's gotten awful. But anyway, my heart and sympathy, or I guess empathy, goes out because I understand what it's like to live in a very restrictive state where all you're trying to do is own the simple, most basic stuff that are guaranteed in our Constitution as individual liberties, our rights, that most of the rest of the country has easy, no problem. And you can't even do that. And they're trying to jam you up and restrict you, put you in a little box of these are the things you're allowed. Everything else that the rest of the country gets, you can't have. Basically treating you like you're guilty until proven innocent, and very restricted on what you can do and what you can have. I know what that feels like, and it's a very frustrating existence, to be honest. I also noticed I felt less stressed and just really relaxed once I left California years ago, 9 years ago now. It really, I didn't realize what it was, just what that was doing every day. So I wish the best in that regard. Let's see. Can't help but wonder how many SBRs are out there from Patriot. I don't know, dude. I mean, I talked about this last time, but it's like, how many registered legal NFA item SBRs are there? There's probably millions at this point. How many pistol braced pistols that were totally cool the last 11 years, and now they're going to be unlawful SBRs and felonies according to the ATF unless you do this. So between pistol brace stuff that's now being considered SBRs or soon to be, and the actual registered SBRs out there, millions. And again, my point last time was, at what point do we get to that Heller versus DC common use, that you can't ban something in common use? I don't know, but I know it's millions. Let's see, I got Doc in the chat. Let's see, I'm aware how annoying it is to be a gun owner in California. I know you are, and I know we talk about that all the time and have talked about that a lot. Yeah, not not the best, man. Also, Doc, we got to catch up. Well, I'll tell you about that later if you missed the beginning. Real question. In the early 2000s, we had access to massive surplus. Do you think it will ever happen again in our lifetime? Oh, man. This is one of those situations where I'm with you. And as a military surplus rifle collector, bachelor's degree in history, history buff, military history guy, I would love to say, oh, yeah, man, those days are, someday we'll be back in the promised land. No, I'm here to tell you, unfortunately, those days are over. The days, and this is pre 922R, by the way, early 90s, those days of walking into a gun shop and you've got a crate of SKSs for $50 each. You've got these imported AK builds that are 200, $250, and they're outstanding and they're affordable. Those days of, even when I worked at Cabela's at the gun counter over a decade ago, we would get huge shipments of Mosin Nagant or Nagant revolvers. We would get Mosin Nagant rifles. We would get other, Swiss K31s and all kinds of surplus. And some days you'd go into work, or you'd have to help take some of the Cosmoline off, which was always terrible. But you'd go into work and you just see, 50 Mosin Nagants just chilling. And people could literally go up to the used gun rack and inspect every one and pick the one they wanted and buy it for like $100. Those days are unfortunately over. And there's two main reasons for that. One is with military surplus pistols, rifles, surplus ammunition, things like all of these things, they only made so much and then they stopped, of course. So at some point, this stuff does dry up. Back in the early 2000s, we started to see, for example, 303 British. There used to be a lot of Lee Enfields and especially a lot of 303 surplus ammunition. You could buy the rifles and the ammo for dirt cheap for what they were. And then the ammunition started to dry up, and then the Enfields started to dry up because they only made so many, and for years they were being sold for dirt cheap, and now we're out of it. So that's problem number one with surplus stuff. Problem number two is laws. I don't see importation, or especially importation, I don't see those laws ever loosening up. I only see them continually, just a continual approach of being more restrictive, shutting down more importation of more things. So just supply and demand. They only made so much of this stuff back in the day, and there's only so much of it left now. And the importation of it is just the walls, I think, over the years are going to continue to get worse. And I don't see, lifting any of these bans or laws. There's a lot of surplus still out there in the world, both with rifles, pistols, ammunition. But because of U.S. law and how it's gotten worse over the past couple decades, especially, we just don't have access to it. You just can't get it. So for those two reasons, the days of super cheap, awesome surplus rifles and ammo, buying stuff for dirt cheap, and it's awesome. Unfortunately, guys, those days are over, and I don't ever see them coming back. As much as I hate to say that too. All right. Let's see. God's here again. I have to store most of my guns out of state now. Yeah, I would imagine in Jersey. I actually had to do the same thing, that I had some AR and some other stuff that, I just had to keep out of state with family because I just couldn't have it in California. I mean, I could, there's nothing saying I couldn't have threw it in my truck and just drove across and went, took it to California, but just the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, man. If you get pulled over, especially where I lived, LA Sheriff's Department, they don't care. At least at the time. Hopefully it's gotten better, and it probably hasn't. But LA Sheriff's, dude, and this is not saying I don't love law enforcement. Got friends, law enforcement, work with dudes, former cops. And I think if your intentions are good and you care about the job, it's a great profession for a great purpose. But there are certain individual officers and certain agencies across the country with certain reputations and things. I don't want the video to be about that, but you didn't want to risk anything in LA County, especially if the sheriffs pull you over. Because Miranda, probable cause, warrant, what's all that? We don't care. We're doing what we're doing. The risk was just way too much. So anyway, that was kind of a tangent. Cold War surplus was amazing. I was born towards the end of the Cold War, didn't live through that, but I imagine that was pretty cool. And having old timers come in the shop and like, yeah, when I was a kid back in the 50s, you can go to the hardware store and there was just a barrel of Mausers and 1903s and Lee Enfields and all kinds of stuff. And it was $5 a rifle and you just bought it in cash and it was super cheap. Yeah, those days are way over. Or are we talking surplus from the Cold War? Because I actually have I've got some spam cans of Mosin ammo that was made in the 70s, 80s. That years ago I bought that for dirt cheap, 440 round spam can for like $80. So either surplus that was available while you were living during the Cold War or surplus that was made in the Cold War that is still out there. Either way, pretty awesome. Let's see. Unrelated question. You said that you were not a fan of the British SA-80 rifle. Correct. Yes, that is 100% correct. Long story short on that is I think for a NATO country, for an allied country to ours, and in our Western NATO alliance, first world armies uniting together, in all of NATO and the Western world, the SA-80, I think it is the absolute most trash, most garbage standard issue rifle of any professional first world military that we have in our Western alliance and NATO. It is, I would easily say that. I can't even think of a second place that comes close to it. It is the most trash standard issue thing, in my opinion, that we have in our NATO alliance that anyone is using. And that's really saying something. And I know they're on the A3 variant. They've tried to fix it. It's just trash, just garbo. I have never heard any good things about it from literally any source, even primary sources. So, but full disclosure, I don't own one. So for the 3 people on planet Earth that love that rifle, I'm sure they would come at me with, hey, you don't even own it. And, okay, fine. But dude, just get an AR platform already and just be done with it. Get the Spear LT from SIG, just AR-15. The British military already has contracts with LMT for their MWS 308, their AR-10 variant for their designated marksmen. Their SAS and commandos, already have AR-15s and stuff. Just hook up your whole standard issue military, your big army, and just be done with it. Just Eugene Stoner that crap and just be done with it. Says me. That's what I would do. Doc Wynn, yes, the best medic ever had. For those, I know Patriots probably seen him. Maybe some of you other guys. Doc Wynn was for our Afghan deployment. He was our platoon medic. But yes, Doc, you were awesome. Let's see. Do you think we'll ever see a real polymer rifle? Well, that's first of all, that's hard to qualify because what do we mean by real polymer rifle? Different companies dating back to the 60s or 70s, I believe, with Colt experimented with polymer lower AR-15s Cav arms. Now we have KE arms. What would Stoner do project? So we've also had things like the Bushmaster Carbon 15, where both the lower and the upper were polymer. The old Plum Crazy polymer uppers and lowers. So various companies have attempted various projects over the years and decades, experimenting with specifically the AR-15, having polymer receivers and trying to make it as lightweight and cheap to manufacture as possible. And honestly, from everything I've seen, physically inspected and shot and seen breakages, the only thing that I think finally really got there is the KE arms polymer lower from the What Would Stoner Do project. Ian and Carl, Forgotten Weapons and In Range TV, they have several years back of working on this really cool project. I still have my own little tiny nitpicky issues with the KE arms lower, but of anything that's ever been done or came before, I think that is the most legit, best as it ever is going to get for right now, best anyone has ever done. Monolithic polymer lower for at least an AR-15. So it would just depend what your definition of a real polymer rifle is. Are we talking the barrel? It's like everything on the gun? We've also had some interesting stuff like the Steyr AUG, that has a lot of polymers in that design, even up to and including the trigger, the sear, the hammer. Those are all polymer, believe it or not. So, I mean, we've kind of seen polymer infused in rifles for decades now. It would just depend on what your definition is. Let's see. Take a little sip. Of all the AR-15 variants, what is my favorite? If we're sticking specifically just with the AR-15, we're not talking about the AR-18 or anything else, just AR-15. Honestly, I think your standard, in slang, what we call a direct impingement, but your standard DI, mechanically internal piston gun, standard internal piston gun, AR-15, 5.56 variety with modern free float rails and M-LOK and optics and all the cool guy stuff we have today. Actually, stuff like this dude right here, BCM, Jack Carbine, Hydra mount, PEC 15. Got the mount for a dead air can, Surefire. I mean, what you can do, and this is all just standard DI, it's internal piston, but standard AR-15, what we call direct impingement, 5.56. I mean, honestly, dude, something like this, as long as it's made, quality made, so you're not cheaping out and having garbage, but it's a well-made gun, standard direct impingement, 5.56 AR-15 is my favorite. For the vast majority of most people and most purposes, standard AR-15, as long as it's built quality, got some modern quality stuff on it. Honestly, dudes, like, that's really my favorite. And you could take your pick: Daniel Defense, BCM, Sons of Liberty, these really good manufacturers of it. But standard Eugene Stoner DI design, as it's been upgraded over the decades and kind of where we're at now, that's my favorite. Let's see. Didn't you say once that you worked with some guys, the British Army, they shot our M4s, strongly preferred it? Yeah. We, in Iraq, encountered some British dudes, and they were big fans of our M4s. We had M4A1s by that time. These poor dudes are still kicking around with the SA-80, and it was like, hey, can we trade? I'm like, no. You take this back. I don't want this. We're going to stick with God and Eugene Stoner, and this is just how we're going to be. Thank you. But yeah, I've never met anyone, primary source or not, that has really had anything fun to say about the SA-80. Even when HK tried to save it twice, It's just, and it's not really HK's fault. I don't blame HK. They really did the best. They put as much lipstick as they could on that pig, and it just, there's only so much you could just get rid of it. But British military is going to do what it's going to do, and good luck to them, because they are good bunch of dudes. At least those guys were. Sure hope that the ATF isn't watching this video. Yeah, casually tags the ATF. I have no problems if the ATF watches my videos. In fact, if someone in the ATF is watching this video, I would absolutely love, which they would probably decline and not want to do, but I would absolutely love to do like a Zoom call interview, and we don't even have to do it live, so that way you can stick to your lane, just, seeking some clarification on this stuff. And just so people know, especially those of you who haven't been in the government or worked a government job, there are a lot of good people in government service, whether it's the military, fire, police, even FBI, ATF, these places that get a lot of flack, especially ATF. There still are individually, there's still a lot of good people there. There's a lot of people who are committed to just following the Constitution and doing their job. Example is the original, actually Vice did a video on this guy, but he worked for the ATF as in the technology branch division to inspect products and make a determination what it is and what it isn't. And he was one of the ATF dudes who ruled when they saw the bump stock. He was like, no, this is not a machine gun. It does not follow the letter of the law. You might, big ATF, or there might be some political push to try to say it's a machine gun, but I have the law and I have the product that's in front of me, and I have to stay in my lane and do my job and respect the Constitution and the law. I can't change the law. This product is not a machine gun. It is what it is. And then he retired, and they immediately, found people that would say it was a machine gun. So, I don't, I think you gotta have some nuance when it comes to individual people working in government. Yes, even the ATF. There's a lot of them, there's only so many ATF agents, but there's a lot of people who work in the ATF that are processing paperwork. They are actually going after real crime, domestic terrorists and gun runners and people like that. So, I want to be careful to not cast a huge broad stroke on everybody. And especially something that it just flies on the winds of political opinion and different presidential administrations and the ebb and flow of politics, something so affected by it like the ATF. There's some people that can only do so much. And then, the big wigs at the agency or Department of Justice, whoever the attorney general or the president is, they're just going to do their own thing. And maybe they don't personally agree with it. We got to take a nuanced approach, but generally speaking, as an agency at large, the ATF has not been very cash money, especially historically speaking, with lessons learned, hopefully. But I would, if someone in the ATF is watching or sees this video, I would love to have an interview with you, do a Zoom call. Please don't come to my house to do the interview. I don't want that, but I would love to prepare some questions and, try to at least what you could say, just to try that. That would be an interesting interview. But I probably think they would decline or not be interested, but who knows? So, let's see. No retros. Yeah, I don't have any retro builds right now. Besides my Mark 18 sort of pistol that's about to be a felony in 4 months. Do you think it's possible to create a polymer barrel with a steel rifled sleeve? So in a way, that's already sort of been done when we're talking carbon fiber barrels. Christensen Arms, one of the first companies out here in Gunnison, Utah, by the way, one of the first companies to start really doing that big time. They might have actually been the first, um, at least to do it on a big scale. Carbon fiber, I mean, some form of hydrocarbons. I'm not a chemist, so, you know, but I know there's similar properties to polymer. So, in a way, I guess you could say that's been done. I think carbon fiber wrapped around a steel insert that has rifling, and you're reducing the weight of the barrel, but you're using the carbon fiber to provide strength and contain all that pressure. That's probably as good as it's probably going to get in terms of barrels. When you think about a barrel, and if we're talking about a hunting rifle, fine, whatever. If we're talking about military usage or something heavy usage, competitive shooters, a barrel, especially if it's full auto, they're going to get hot real fast, lots of rounds, high round count. You want that barrel to last as long as possible for as many rounds as possible and try to extend the service life of that barrel. The rifling is going to have to be made out of steel, or, yeah, I mean, steel. Um, and providing the strength, you can do carbon fiber, which is working now. But you only really see that in hunting rifles or rifles that not a lot of shots are intended to be taken. It's a one and done, two and done kind of situation. I don't think you would ever see, unless we have some huge advancements in chemistry or whatever. I don't think you're ever going to see a machine gun barrel that's like a carbon fiber sleeve, steel insert with rifling. It wouldn't make it for what you need a machine gun to do. So to have polymer wrapped around us, I just don't see it being strong enough. You need carbon fiber to hold that. And when you have a polymer, chain of hydrocarbons, but they're not bound like carbon fiber, I just don't see that working unless we made some serious advancements sometime in the future. Again, I'm not a chemist. I'm not an engineer. I don't work for DuPont. I don't know. I just don't feasibly see it with everything we have or don't have these days yet. Let's see. Is ATF still relegated to old technology, aren't they? Or the ATF is still relegated to old technology, aren't they? Yes. So by law, ATF cannot use like Microsoft Excel or digital searchable information applications. Basically, they can't data bank this stuff digitally. What they can, I mean, they're still using floppy disks, old computers, microfilm, like you see in the old movies where they go to the library and they're scrolling past, old news clippings and stuff. That's what they're doing today. The big question is at the ATF Tracing Center, Record Center, West Virginia, where all of these 4473s eventually end up when a gun shop eventually goes out of business. Are they digitally scanning these for microfilm, or are they using software that we have now where probably some of you guys with your printer at home, or your phone in your pocket, you can scan a document and it automatically, populates the words and it makes it searchable. So you can just search for a word and boom, you find it. Is that what they're doing? I don't know. They are still legally restricted on the technology they're allowed to use and to the extent of their record keeping and things that they can't do, like create a digitally searchable database. Now, are they doing that? I don't know. I mean, if I had to guess, probably there's some potential there that they might be trying to get away with electronically searchable, digitally searchable microfilm scans. I have no idea. Which again, if you're watching this in the ATF, I'd love to have an interview, and that'd be one of my questions. which I don't think I would get an answer to, but I would ask it. Let's see, kind of like back to God's Hero, kind of like a poly pistol frame. Yeah, I don't see polymer being strong enough to be like a bolt or a slide for a pistol or a barrel or majority or half barrel construction. Actually, going back to the original AR-10, when Armalite had Eugene Stoner and they were debuting the AR-10 for the U.S. military to check out, that was something that kind of screwed them over. Was Eugene Stoner wanted to keep it an all steel barrel. It was 308, and one of the owners of Armalite wanted to further reduce the weight, and they had some kind of either polymer or carbon mesh wrapped steel sleeve barrel, and it just wasn't strong enough. Overall diameter wasn't good enough, and the barrel actually burst and opened and kicked the rifle out of the testing, gave it kind of a bad rap. So this has been something people have been trying since the late 50s. But even where polymer is today, I don't see it really. You're gonna need, again, unless there's some alien technology or huge, advancements in chemistry and whatever, you're gonna need steel. You're gonna need it, at least for the barrel in some form or fashion. Your bolts, your slides for pistols, unless it's a 22, you can always get away with an aluminum slide. But to some extent, with firearms as we know them today, you're gonna need steel. I don't see a way you could make 100% polymer gun that would survive for very long at all. You could do it with, and then that's like the Defense Distributed with their Liberator pistol and other, the do-it-yourself community 3D printer guys. You could probably do an all, but then you would still need springs that are out of steel. And, so it's like I don't think there's any getting away from that. How do you feel about the changes in doctrine with the SIG MCX Spear being adopted, which is essentially a battle rifle? So I'm going to sideways answer that by saying, I don't think the MCX Spear is really going to be a big hit with the U.S. Army or the military, any other branches that get their hands on. I think the M4, M4A1s, AR-15 derivatives that we have in service by the millions today, I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. And I think, especially, in the reconnaissance troop that we were in, it's like when you need everything to just be lightweight, handy, you're limited on how many rounds you can carry. I mean, some legitimate OG like Vietnam reasoning and needs for the M16. I need as many rounds as I can do. I need the magazines to be reasonable to carry, the weight of the overall gun and ammo. I want to maximize how many rounds I can carry for the weight and size. And here we have this, Spear, SIG Spear, in the 277 Fury, basically an AR-10 sized AR-18 design is what it really is, with these huge, AR-10 size mags, huge heavy rounds. The gun is big and heavy. We got that, high speed, Hubble Space Telescope optic thing on top of it. And I think your infantry line companies, even the Cav Scouts, and any grunts or units that are going to be more combat arms focused are going to look at that thing and just be like, dude, let's issue out a couple or several, maybe one per squad, maybe two per squad. And that's going to be kind of our designated marksman / we need more long range capability guy. And the rest of us are just going to stick with our M4s. So I think that's probably what is really going to happen. I know at SHOT Show, 6 Hour, they've been touting their contract guns and their new squad, next generation contract winning guns and all this cool stuff. But in reality, at the ground level, at unit level, where the rubber meets the road, I just don't see the spear really. I certainly 100% don't see it replacing for line infantry, combat arms, brigade combat teams, where everyone is supposed to give up their M4s and now everyone has a spear. That's not going to happen. I don't know. No. I think they're just going to issue them out, kind of like our first deployment with the M110, the SASs that we had, and how only certain people get them and it's very limited. And I think that's sort of maybe in more numbers, but that's sort of probably how it's going to be actually treated on the ground level. Let's see. You got any new almanacs coming? Not currently, but my plan is to do more live streams and actually more content. And the live streams, hopefully, you can get some sort of almanac kind of coverage. But I do want to try to get a guest, try to do an almanac where it's not just me, but we actually have interface. There's some camera equipment and setup and microphones I would like to get. So nothing on the agenda for right now. This will be the last question, and then I'm going to get some rest and go. Let's see. Doing business by allowing something to be purchased and then later taking that ability away is bad faith. The ATF should be ashamed of themselves. The politicization is awful. And that's from Jerry. 50 Browning machine gun. Yeah, that's a huge thing I've said in the past. That's a huge thing I said last live stream on the first time I addressed this topic. For me, the concept of pistol braces are going to be totally cool and legal for 11 years. And there's going to be an estimated 10 to 40 million of these things out there. And for 11 years, they've been cool. ATF has said, okay, they're fine. All the various braces that have come out over the years. And then you got people who panic bought firearms, especially during COVID and the riots and everything. And they panic bought, an AR that had a brace on it. They, as far as they know, they legally bought it with a background check, paperwork, invoice, receipt. Maybe they shot it once or twice, threw it in the closet, and just kind of forgot about it. These people are not even going to know. They're not even going to be made aware, or they're not going to be aware that the ATF just decided, after over a decade and millions out there in common use, all of a sudden the rug just got pulled out from under you, and the ATF decided to move the goalposts. And the law, as written, did not change. The law was not amended or changed through Congress. It wasn't signed by the president. There was no constitutional process on how, like the 1934 NFA did not change here. It hasn't changed since 1968. And for, a subdivision of the Department of Justice, which is the executive branch, to do this on their own and change how they feel about what the definition of a rifle should be, move those goalposts on something they said was cool for the past decade, over a decade, and now, again, 10 to 40 million braces out there. And if you don't do what we say because we just changed our mind randomly, then you're going to be a felon if you even know that we're changing things. Yeah, I don't think it's right. Like I said last time, shouldn't be this way. This is not a good faith effort. I don't think this is helping, solving, or fixing anything. It's certainly not going to make anyone safer. If anything, it's going to put more people in danger of picking up a felony. And these are good, law-abiding people that have no intention of committing felonies. Like I said last time, I guess I'll end it with saying, if we are going to have an ATF, if they're going to be there, then I would want them to be focused on going after domestic terrorists and people who want to blow things up, and the actual gun runners and actual criminals and gangs trying to steal guns and run guns, and terrorists trying to blow up public spaces. Like, if we're going to have an ATF, I want them to focus their money, their time, their effort, their agents on actual crime, that really is out there. I don't want so much personnel, money, time, effort siphoned off and devoted to, well, how long is your barrel? Because I don't know if I'm going to process your tax stamp or not. Or, hey, we got to measure from, your middle of the trigger to the end of the length of pull. And if it's not exactly this, then, it's like, if we're going to have something like the ATF, if it is still going to exist, I would prefer it to actually go after criminals and not create criminals out of good law abiding people. So I guess that's my final message for this. Thank you guys for all being here. Thank you for your questions. Awesome questions. Feel free, for those who are going to watch this later, feel free to go ahead, just drop any comments and questions you had. And yeah, I want you guys to have a great night, and I will see you next time. If I can end the stream. Almost there.